for making the time to come along in advance of the latest process evaluation. I just wanted to say a few words before we got going, and Katie will take you through along with the rest of the team. It's a really, really different one this time, quite obviously. You know, we're all obviously conscious that the last 6 months have been like 6 months none of us have ever experienced before. So, you know, I think that Sport England understands that this process evaluation will throw up different things as well as ourselves, but equally the world is what it is, and so kind of what's happened over the last 6 months is part of that story. But I just wanted to sort of reassure people that that kind of context of where maybe, you know, at times I have no doubt that people's morale and enthusiasm has been impacted at times because it's so difficult to get things done, because all the work which is around building connections with people and relationships has been so disrupted. So we're conscious of it, and we're trying to deal with that sympathetically. The other thing that I wanted to sort of say is that in the past, with our kind of program theory, there's been a lot going on, and we've tended to sort of focus on the theories maybe more than the stories, if you like. And so it was really just to sort of say that we're going to try a slightly different tack on this occasion by centering the stories, hopefully to reveal the program theories that we've talked about within them. And one of the reasons that we're doing that is that we have this sense that it can be challenging to sort of focus on one element of a program theory and then think about, well, how does this relate to my work, this specific aspect? And so what we're trying to do now is to look at some case examples that really embrace all of the different aspects of the program theory. So you'll see as we kind of work through these that what we're trying to sort of understand is when we see work progressing, it tends to be that a number of different elements are coming together, and we're trying to sort of represent that in the work from what we've seen across the local pilots, but also to use that as a means to maybe in a more real world sense enable people to reflect back and think about how does that relate to the practice within my own locality. So hopefully this is our first stab today to share some of those examples, and then we've got a few weeks to play around with them before we kind of get the submission off. But we hope that you're going to help us to sort of make sense of the case studies we've got and refine them, and maybe hopefully tell a different kind of story that perhaps will be a little bit more accessible when we get to the end result with this process evaluation report. But I'm going to hand over now to Katie just to set a little bit more context in terms of a reminder around what the program theory is, and then how that might relate to some of the case examples.
Thank you, Tim. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to shout out to Kath. Kath, are you all right to share the master slide deck? I think because you've got the most slides, so it would be easy for you to do that. But I'll just start talking while we try and get that shared on the screen for everybody to see. So just wanted to really go back over some of the things that we've been looking for and trying to understand in our embedded role, as well as some of the more detailed conversations you've recently been having with Gabby and Lizzie and Kath regards to the examples that we've been showing up. And so I just wanted to give a really quick overview of some of the actual headlines. As most of you will know, we've only really had these conversations with you over the last couple of weeks, so this is hot off the press, and it is about collective sense making today. So this is not an exhaustive tour of everything that we've learned over the last 6 months. It's really just headlines. So just wanted to, first of all, really focus on the program theories, and there's 5 that we've been focusing on over the last 6 months: involving local people and building assets, strategic enabling collective leadership, effective cross and within sector working, transforming governance and processes, and learning and adapting. And just really highlight some of the key things that we've learned. If we start with local people, involving local people, many of you have over these last 6 months lost contact with some of the key kind of local champions and key organisations that you were working with, who were connecting into the communities of your focus. And that's understandable. People were responding to the COVID crisis. We've got some suggestions that actually the bonds and the relationships that you've been building there has actually allowed for a better response to that crisis in some areas. But for some of you, it meant that there was quite a hiatus in what you were planning to do and were doing. But this is now starting to pick up again, and so there are starting to be either new contacts and new people involved in the programme than you previously had, or indeed those old relationships are starting to build back again with an input into physical activity. So just moving on to strategic enabling collective leadership, you know, we've really seen this as an opportunity to take stock and think about the importance of physical activity or not within the local systems, and whether it really plays a part in the immediate response, the sort of longer term response, and now perhaps in terms of the recovery period. And we've identified that physical activity has had a different role in those different areas, but that it's reinforced the issue that we've spoken about over the last 12 months, the sense that it is so important to have senior leaders within your localities leading on physical activity, and where there is some strategic input, then there has still remained that focus on physical activity, and not so much where there isn't the strategic input. In this same theme, we also have there's been the systems leadership training, which has really focused on the values profiling and the connection to the work, and understanding systems concepts such as complexity. And so many of you have attended that training, and the feedback that we've had from you has been that has been a really important period for you to critically reflect on your engagement with this programme, what you might be able to get out of it, and what you hope to do going forward. Understandably, some of you were not able to attend that training because of being redeployed elsewhere. We've identified some really interesting examples of where cross-sector collaborations have actually come together, and you know, that some of the need to respond to COVID has actually brokered new, really trusted, really engaged, productive relationships. And I guess one of the questions for later is what's actually been behind that, and how can you actually harness that moving forward. And we've, you know, clearly you've all been through a period of real rapid learning and adapting. And perhaps more than ever, it's been an opportunity where we've noticed people have been able to take stock, whether it's because they've been redeployed and have been working in a very different way with different stakeholders, and it's given them ideas about how they might take the physical activity work forward, or whether it's because things have actually come to a bit of a standstill in your location, but you've had the opportunity therefore to rethink and think over what you were doing. So there has been, probably we would identify, a bit more engagement with the sort of reflection and thinking about what's happening, and how you might progress with this work going forward. And then finally, just on the transforming governance and processes, you know, really this period of time has identified that where there is urgency and a real need to respond, then some of the bureaucratic processes that you might have identified being getting in the way in the past have been overcome. And whether or not that's something that can be learnt from moving forward is something we really want to engage in going forward, and within this session itself. So absolutely recognise that's a really quick whistle-stop tour through some of our higher level learnings for this process evaluation period. But as Tim highlighted, what we want to do now is just to actually share some examples and then have most of the time focused on making sense of those examples and reflecting on those examples, how they relate to your locations, if at all. So the idea here is that we're going to present our ideas, but we want to have a discussion with everybody so that we can make sense of this and learn from it together. So I hope that's okay. We're on time again, so I'm going to hand over to Gabby now. And Gabby's going to just take us through the first case example that we wanted to share with everybody, which is an example from Berry.
Hello everyone, how are we all doing? I'm just trying to get my notes on my screen. Kath, would you mind moving the slide on? Is that okay? Yeah, so I was just going to chat through the Berry Holiday Hunger / the Fit and Fed programme, which they've been working on particularly over the last 6 months. So just to give you a bit of context, so the holiday hunger is something that affects obviously children in Berry, with free school meals, you know, during this period of time not being available in the summer. And that means that many children do miss out on food during that holiday period. So the idea in Berry was to engage with families who will be accessing local food banks over the summer period. And the delivery of the Fit and Fed programme has been rolled out in 4 different areas of Berry. And they've been linking in with food banks for families who are in need. So that work has been possible due to the setup of the community hubs, which have come about obviously due to COVID. And they've sort of had the direct links with the food banks. So based on some of the changes that COVID has brought about, there was a solution initiated by the steering group member to link in the team with the school catering team. And this member of the steering group manages the school catering teams and coordinated volunteers to help prepare packed lunches for family who access the Fit and Fed programme. And another great thing that happened was that the school catering department also donated surplus stock that they had been left with due to early school closures. Originally, what was meant to happen was the school playgrounds were going to be used as a venue for the Fit and Fed programme, but obviously due to COVID, schools had to have deep cleans, and that instead they had got linked in with the local green spaces, which were then used to which were close to the community centres and food banks, so that they could link in with local green spaces and offer activities for those community members linking in with the Fit and Fed programme. So another great thing that happened off the back of this was one of the community members in a more deprived area linked in with Lucy Fitzsimon to take her around the estate to meet families who may benefit from the Fit and Fed programme. And that community is normally quite hard to integrate with. So this community member actually went round with Lucy and introduced her to some of the other families within that area, which, you know, is a good barrier to be broken down within that community, and just enabling that more of that trust and reciprocity. So yeah, that community members just helped broker new relationships and connections to link in with the Fit and Fed programme, and you know, helped reach other families which may otherwise have not been reached. So yeah, that's a sort of summary of the programme. Do you want to just move the slide along, Kath? Great. So yeah, so we've been thinking about how this links in with the programme theories, and so the first thing here is thinking about strategic leadership enabling collective leadership. And in regards to that, you know, Berry did do a reshuffle of their steering group, and actually that's enabled, you know, some really authentic interest and influence to connect with others, which has led to, you know, this linking with the Fit and Fed programme. Have you got anything else to add on that, Katie?
No, that's fine. Yeah.
That's fine. And then also what we're seeing here is this real, you know, effective work across and between sectors. So, you know, we've got everyone working towards this common purpose, which, you know, we know for whole systems approach is, you know, really, really key. And that member on the steering group obviously has enabled this link with school catering. And that's enabled, if you like, these new links between the local pilot, community hubs and food banks, which may not have otherwise existed without that effective work across and between sectors. And then finally, another key link is this involving target local people and growing assets. So working with organisations already supporting the target groups. And in this case, we had one member of the community who linked in with Lucy, who's enabled and brokered, if you like, new relationships which may not have otherwise been able to happen without that linking from that community member who's enabled, you know, these new relationships to be harnessed and that trust to be built up within the community in Bury. So in terms of linking with all programme theories, as we know, this example does link in across each of the programme theories. Katie, have you got anything to add on this slide? Because I'm...
Yeah, so in terms of the example that Gabby's given is really highlighting some strengths around 3 of the programme theories, but not all of them so much. And so where we've got the orange text, it's saying that there is some link with that, but perhaps there's maybe more work to do or more that can be thought through to really embed this type of working. So in terms of transforming governance and processes, of course, as you might have understood, this was a short-term response and something which has operated over the holiday period. And now, as the evaluators, will be looking to see whether or not those new relationships that have been built up are actually embedded and new ways of working between those organisations and the local pilot team in Bury can be reinforced. And then just again reflecting that at the very beginning of this period, Lucy, who's the community engagement manager, apologise Lucy if I've got your actual title wrong there, did lose contact with the people that she was working with, but and so it's quite hard to involve local people and make sure that what you were planning was really fit for purpose. But through this process now re-engage with new community champions and hopefully that will develop the insight to continue to build the programmes. So that's just highlighted one of the examples that we wanted to share with you, and we're now going to go to breakout rooms. Really want to apologise to the facilitators out there that this is the agenda that I put together. I skipped over the first part of it, so I'm sorry I've missed part of the agenda. But what we're going to do is we're going to have the first couple of discussions that are in the agenda within the first breakout room. So if we start by discussing this example, the Bury Fit and Fed example that Gabby has just gone through, and spend 10 to 15 minutes having a chat about that and how it corresponds to what you've seen in your local areas. And then we will then go to the first session and just cover that off at the end, which is thinking really more broadly about the extent to which people value physical activity in your locality. So Nicole, yeah, everybody apologise for that, but hopefully your facilitator will understand what I'm trying to get at, and we can have some really rich discussions for the 20-25 minutes.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, Kate, did you say is it still 15 minutes we're going to have in the rooms?
So because I've jumped over the first discussion, which was meant to be 10 minutes, okay, and rolling it into the second discussion, which is 15 minutes, we can still come back at the end of breakout 2, which was meant to be 1:45.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Can
Yes.
see the slide, Kath, and the scroll bar to the left.
It's not in presentation format, it's in...
Right,
No.
so let me just do this. Square, I did it before and I can't remember how I did it.
It's perfectly fine though, Kath. So.
Okay. All right, as long as you can see it, but I did do it quite easy. All right, I'm going to get started. So we're going to talk about the Stockport kit bags, and really this is a 2020 work stream, so it's a summer thing, and they've sort of developed a training resource programme that's targeting parents, carers, families of children, or SEND families really, but people that have been identified as being particularly inactive. And central aim is to make sure that these families of SEND children can be active in their own homes. And it was being developed pre-coronavirus, so it's a great example of how work that they were doing has sort of fallen in quite well into the sort of pandemic, and probably has learning across lots of other sort of communities and families, not just SEND community. There's 3 phases in the programme, and it's a test and learn process centrally, and it's really adaptive, and it's been responsive to coronavirus restrictions as well. So here's a little image of the bag. So it's in partnership with Lusu, and lots of different bits and pieces in the bag. So you can see there's bits of equipment and balls and rackets and things that people can get involved with if they have a garden or a yard space, but also they're sort of soft enough to use indoors, if you didn't have that sort of space as well. But it is not just a magic bag. It's not just, there's the bag, crack on, and everything will be fixed in terms of physical activity in your family. There's sort of 7 elements around it, and I think it's about this training. It's about training and upskilling the parent carer, and they almost become the activity activator. There's a workforce, if we call the family a workforce, but there is a training element here that's really central to it. There's a sector element in terms of referrals, so we really want to be accessing and engaging with those most inactive families. So there's links with schools, there's making sure that we're reaching the right people. And it's about getting the activators ready. So it's not just you've done the training, but part of that training is really trying to get buy-in. Why is it important to be physically active? And once the importance of the wider sort of benefits associated with that are fully understood by the parents, they're almost an ambassador then for physical activity, and understand it and get it and want to do this work. The kits themselves are fully inclusive, so a lot of research has been done in terms of the different sort of needs of these young people and why the different bits of equipment might work well across that. There's also activity cards in there, not just the kit, so there's different session ideas that are involved in there to mix it up and make sure that people can use the equipment in different ways. And then there's the coach in the room idea, so everything, lockdown happened, everyone was doing J-Wix, everything turned digital and people engage in different ways, and having this almost direct support into your living room through either the YouTube videos that were put on there and the Zoom sessions, and the support is just really important element of this. And finally, what underpins this is the relationship building, so the online support directly to the families from the coaches to do the work, but also informal conversations throughout this to make sure they understand what's working, what's not. So how does all that link with our programme theories? And it neatly does fit with all 5, but I think the 2 sort of key areas where it strongly fits in quite clearly around involving target local people and growing assets, and around learning and adapting. So if we're talking about involving local target people, there is lots of consultation, lots of feedback involved in developing this idea and the design and the co-delivery, co-production of this work. And then the funding directly to Lucy for the bags, they're growing that asset as well and supporting that. And then the online presence and shares and just the information around this, so engagement piece. learning and adapting, so local data, you know, communications, many adaptations of this, post feedback and communication online. We also have strategic leadership enabling collective leadership. So we're looking at this as a good example of upskilling and development, you know, using the word workforce loosely here, but, you know, families as activity activators and upskilling the parents to actually embrace that role has been really important. Effective work across and between sectors. So, you know, Aiming High also did a sort of adaptation of this and supported 10 families. So that was another sort of sector that we're reaching, and lots of schools are involved to sort of refer. So there's, you know, lots of different sectors involved in this piece. And then transforming governance and processes. So, you know, we can look to LUSU, sports engagement, as a potential governance workaround maybe. But really it's the resources related to the physical activity agenda. So workforce development, upskilling the parents, and then promoting physical activity in the settings. Just want to share with you a nice little image here of a mind map, which staff at Seashell and Stephen, hope you don't mind me showing this. It's your mind sort of displayed on show here for everyone to see. But this really shows how all of these 5 programme theories, when they're thinking about this piece of work and the wider SEND offer, they're using some of the elements to sort of plan the work and look at areas for development or gaps. And we've got high profile champions up here, and, you know, we're just looking at how we can involve the 5 theories across the work you're doing. So I've sort of touched on this, I won't go into it in too much detail, but there has been a real feedback loop here in reviewing success, adapting this programme. It's co-delivery, we're looking at parents to be community activators, but really it's about building routines and habits into everyday life. It wasn't meant to be, got a 12-week programme, there's a bag, go and do this. It was like, how can the families then integrate these new ways of being physically active into everyday life? Learning and adapting, so a few methods here. Got some real-time responsive adaptation to delivery, and those adaptations came about through various mechanisms. One's a closed Facebook group, people reviewing what they're doing, people involved in it. There's been the session coaches who have been directly involved in phone conversations and doing interviews to ensure they've got this feedback loop. Then amendments have been made, and these amendments have been tracked and fully thought about. So you can see here, Seashell and the LP have looked at what they have been told from the families and then what they've done directly as a result of that feedback. So I'll just go to a couple of these. So there were no instructions in the bag of how to use the equipment at first, so it was just there's the bag and almost expecting families to adapt and be responsive. And so as a response, they've got the video clips on the Facebook page, links to the YouTube channel, and then they're looking into creating a QR code on these little actual handouts that enable you to sort of use it more interactively. So I won't go in this in more details, we'll share all of these slides afterwards, but just to show you that the learning and adaptation piece is real, and you know, they have thoroughly adapted in real time and not waited till the end of the programme. These changes have been throughout the delivery cycle. So success factors, really the opportunity to review, the check and challenge, making sure the equipment's right, that the support was right, the activity cards were good. There's a robust and tested methodology here. It's around gaining of trust into allowing people almost to come into the homes of these families while they were very isolated, probably very inactive, already identified as inactive families, and trying to become part of their daily routine and support them that way. This work's already getting attention from National Disability Awards and got through to the 2nd round of sport in England's innovation bid. So really, really good, strong piece here. And some early sort of anecdotal evidence, but there is the robust research that's been running alongside this. But families have noted weight loss throughout lockdown and engagement, which is obviously a great thing, as that was identified as their actual goal for some of these families. Young person now attending a tennis group that they weren't part of before, and other young person taking the bag into the school that they attend, and the staff now using this and upskilling others. So there's been a knock-on effect into different sectors and communities, and using the cards as embedded habit, really, not this novel activity that maybe it might on the first glance appear to be. So that is the end of that. So sorry.
Okay, so thanks, Kath. So we're going to go back to our breakout rooms now to discuss the example that Kath's just given us there, and we're running a tiny little bit behind on the agenda. So if we can go to 2:10 for this breakout room, please. So hand over to Gabby. She's just going to talk a little bit about the leadership training and one person's experience of that.
Hi again, everybody. So I'm going to be just talking a little bit about the systems leadership training and how that sort of has tapped into strategic leadership, enabling collective or distributed leadership. So the local pilot implementation group highlighted that there was maybe a skills, capacity, confidence gap around systems leadership. And so the local pilot teams, you guys, were invited or had the opportunity to participate in systems leadership and values training over a series of online sessions. So obviously, you know, many did attend, although due to the current climate of COVID, that was tricky for some people to attend just due to obviously redeployment and other work prioritisation. But within that training, there was values profiling to gain a better connection to the work, each other, and better understand how to influence. And also there were the systems leadership concepts to just understand that in a little bit more detail, and in order to understand how to operate in, you know, such a complex environment. And then in addition to that, there was one-to-one reflective time as well. And I know I've spoken to a few of you who have engaged with that training. So in Salford, I spoke to Claire, and following the training, Claire had that reflective time and started thinking about how, you know, she could maybe incorporate some of what she'd learned in the training. So following this training, Claire took the time to take the initiative to drive social prescribing for children.
Sorry, Gabby, let me just shout out. If you can just put yourselves on mute, we've got a bit of background. Thank you. So following the training, Claire took the initiative to sort of try and drive the need for social prescribing for children and young people in Salford, because that was something that was missing and felt that was potentially needed there. So she drove the conversations with strategic leads, which were both internal and external to the CVS in which she works. And that included initiating conversations with the CEO. There was meetings arranged by Claire with partnership leads, a voice and influence manager, and other different strategic leads sort of across the piece. And stepping back, that sort of enabled her to, you know, see the bigger picture, and, you know, ultimately had or increased that confidence to communicate with these individuals and have that recognition that, you know, you don't need to be a leader in the traditional sense to actually take ownership.
So yeah, there's an evidence there of sort of more confidence, and the notion that you, as I said, don't have to be a leader or in a managerial position to create change or create movement, and you can relinquish that controlled and build those relationships, build trust, take ownerships, and actually drive that progress where you can. So in terms of the primary link with the programme theories, you know, the first one, you know, that springs to mind, if you like, is that strategic leadership enabling collective leadership. And, you know, from the training, there's been that chance to upskill, have that training, and then increase that confidence to drive the agenda forward. But it also sits into this sort of effective work across and between sectors, because, you know, Claire's just demonstrated that she's been able to work outside the normal structures across several new partners and bring people together around a common agenda. And then finally, that sort of learning and adapting, and, you know, that is critical to this reflection, and which, you know, we have spoken quite a little bit about during this local pilot. And, you know, COVID has, you know, brought that opportunity to take stock, build skills that were maybe missing, and have that refocus that we you know, might not have actually had if we didn't have COVID. So, you know, it just sort of highlights that, really. And then obviously there is the other two programme theories. So, you know, with these, it's not saying, you know, that it won't, this example won't one day sit across these examples as well, in terms of involving target local people and growing assets. But in regards to this, you know, social prescribing can be person-centred, but, you know, this is early days just now. So this involving local people, target growing assets, that's something that actually might come into play with this example, maybe a little bit further down the road, but, you know, we're at sort of early days, if you like, at the moment. And then secondly, transforming governance and process. You know, yes, again, social prescribing will create new approaches, but it is really early days for this theory, if you like, to come to play into this example.
Great, thank you, Gabby. So we'll go out to the breakouts again. Can I just say, Nicole, thank you so much. That was not an easy task. You've done a brilliant job of getting everyone in and out of breakout rooms, as far as I can tell. So I appreciate that, really, thank you. So we've got 5 minutes, and I don't know about everybody else, but I found that really mind-blowingly interesting, but quite a lot going on in my head at the moment. So I just wanted to ask if everyone could just take a moment, just think about for yourselves, either based on what we've discussed here today, or just your thoughts over the last 6 months, like what has been the most significant learning for you? And if you don't mind posting that up in the chat, I'm hoping that it will all happen all simultaneously, and so nobody's going to be, you know, too concerned about what everyone's writing, but just what's been the most significant learning. And I'll just reflect on some of the conversations in my breakout rooms, you know, really around effective cross-sector or within sector learning, just again reiterating this point about having the right people who can open up the conversations or make the links in your steering groups and beyond, your wider partners. And if they're not, if it's not the right group, you know, having the bravery to be able to actually to try to refresh that again. You know, this is an iterative, ongoing process. On that note, in terms of involving local people, real reflection on the Seashell Trust activity packs of actually the level and ongoing dialogue that can really feed into a very comprehensive and well-received offer, so that insight not just being a kind of one-hit wonder, but just something which is built on over time, and there's a continual backwards and forwardsing of checking and developing and iterating. In terms of the strategic piece of, you know, where physical activity has not gained that sort of high level of traction, you know, thinking about what new opportunities perhaps there might be because of COVID around the health impacts, or the mental health impacts, or the social cohesion impacts. And so Russ from Stockport was explaining how that's been a long time in the making, way beyond the local pilot, but that is now all really coming together because of those consistent messages and building up that evidence and insight over time. And then a reflection that actually it has been a period of reflection, whilst, you know, at the points when you've not been manically trying to you know, really solve local problems, but there has been an opportunity to sort of shift and refocus, and an appreciation for what can be learnt and how we can adapt over time. And then finally, just in terms of the governance and processes, what does asset-based approaches mean, you know, and if it's something that's locally identified as a key asset, what does that mean for your procurement processes? And are these workarounds, or are they something where there are different commissioning models or different procurement models or ways around the hierarchies in order to proportionately support those, like where there's active community assets that can really bring people together. So those were some of my key thoughts. I can see there has been some input in the chat and really appreciate that. So I, you know, just give it 1 or 2 more minutes, but that's it from us. Nicole, do you want to say?